Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where we talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Snowpiercer. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Well, first and foremost, obviously we're picking up with Andre's circumstances. He wakes up and finds himself on Snowpiercer, but not the Snowpiercer he knows. Obviously, God, what's the word I'm looking for? The symbols on the train had obviously changed over into a skull representing death, which I think is very befitting in many different regards. For one, obviously Andre is like, oh, you're not dreaming, you're dying. But also it's like a little bit of an inverse of Snowpiercer itself. It's like, what was Snowpiercer always supposed to be like? This arc of life, like the last of humanity and stuff, right? So it's almost befitting that like this like interesting time and everything, but bizarro train of sorts would be like a death train in an extent. I'm sure there's a deeper layer to that. I think it's interesting because obviously Andre was under the impression like, all right, everything's so topsy-turvy, everything's upside down. Instead of all the power in the train being in the engine in the front, it's actually all in the tail, which is ironic considering like it's the inverse of where he came from, where the tail had no power at all. So... but it's more like, no, it's all reciprocal. Obviously the title of the episode, the Ouroboros, serpent eating its own tail. Well, just snake. Well, serpent, snake, obviously same thing. Eating its own tail. So, obviously meeting a lot of familiar faces, but not the versions of them he knows. And I think it's kind of interesting that, I mean, allies and enemies, well, mostly it ended up being people he knew that ended up dying. Because I'm trying to think, like, I mean, except for, like, the probably two guards that got killed at the beginning when, like, Ruth, Javi, and Wilfred came to save him. Other than that, like, everyone who died later on, Javi, Ruth, Sam, Alex, were allies of his, you know? But, I mean, he had other allies that lived because Bess didn't die and neither did Ben. So, or neither did Zara or Josie. But these are just, but it's like, maybe it's supposed to symbolize the fact is that, like, well, I mean, it could also be symbolic of some level of guilt over all the death he's caused on Snowpiercer, too. And maybe on some level, that's the subconscious being like, yeah, you're going to be responsible for the death of even more people you know and care about. I mean, plus, this is all still in the aftermath of killing Pike, which Pike is manifested as a priest, and telling him, like, oh, you could get forgiveness and stuff like that. But for Andre, it's like, right, you are a threat to New Eden. You're a threat to this paradise that, like, this lie, yes, I told, but this lie united. It gave everyone something to believe in. It's also because he wholeheartedly believed in it himself, so I think he thought, like, right, it's a lie, but it's a necessary lie. Once again, even Ruth saying that the train will always need a lie. A lie is what's kept the train afloat for like 7 years was Melanie's lie. So I was so certain because every time like things kind of shifted and changed, I was like, okay, so who's going to end up being the tail boss? And at first I thought well, the only one person we haven't met so far in the episode is Josie, but it turned out not to be Josie. It ended up being Liana because I saw the actress. I was like, oh man, that actress. I'm blanking on her name. Oh, because I think she's best known for Battlestar Galactica, I think. Things I best know her from is Clementine from Hemlock Grove. I also best know her for, Charmed, actually, because she most recently, I think Charmed's probably the most recent thing I've seen her, but I've seen her pop up in stuff from time to time. And, it's going to, like, I think her last name's McClure. I'm just going to look it up because it's going to bother the crap out of me. Candace McClure. There we go. But yeah, her being Liana, like the moment, I was like, because at first I was like, who are you? Like, why are you just randomly, you're not someone from the train. And then, the more he started, like, especially when, it wasn't until he got Zara's letter, I was like, why would you... Oh, and he's like, wow. He's like, but no, this can't be your future. It's like, no, because your future's going to be off train. And she's like, no, like, it's not my death that you're basically trying to avoid. And it's because what is his greatest fear? Because it's about, well, I think his greatest fears ended up being tied together. But at first, it's like he was scared for her future. He wanted a better future for her, but I guess he was scared. One of his fears is like, her future would end up bring her still back here, that even after everything they did, the train was still going to be her future, that specifically the tail was going to be her future. So I don't know, this being an inverse world, obviously the tail, that's where all the power is, but maybe that's just still kind of that thing of all that Snowpiercer represented, all the sacrifice, all the blood, all the death. And it's just like all that you fought for a better future, and your daughter ends up right where you started. I think it's kind of like, every parent wants more for their child, but to know that this is where you end up regardless is kind of the sad result of it all. And then there's the whole Asha thing. And at first I was like, okay, are we going to dive into like some secrets that Asha's keeping? Now the question is, has Asha been personally keeping this secret? Or is it that she doesn't even recognize it? That's what I'm so curious about. Like, does she not want to take away that hope because Andre believed it so wholeheartedly, so she didn't want to say anything? But obviously, like, there's that whole thing with the Marauders. But then, like, it's like, right, what are you keeping from me? What is it that I'm so afraid of? And then he looks in her that little locker and sees. It's just like Beth says. She's like, oh, you must have seen a picture somewhere. He's like, I've never seen it anywhere before. And it's like, right, so that's the question. Did he actually see it there, or is he doubting himself so much he's retroactively believing he saw it there? But it's like, right, Bess put this in his head like a long time ago. Like, the moment he brought this all up, she's like, are you sure you're not just being crazy? But Bess hasn't questioned him since then. Just kind of been like, all right, like, it fits a little bit with what's kind of been told. So it's like, all right, we'll go with this lie because it's a necessity to give people something to cling on to. Because even Ben's like, yeah, going to Africa, like, that might be like that spot in Africa might be like our best shot. I mean, it seems like the best option, but even then it's like, it's not a guarantee, so. But for Andre, it's like, what if I like have built this on a lie? Because he created a lie, but because he believed so wholeheartedly it was the truth, and now you're like, wait, that might have been a lie that I concocted, that I wanted a brighter future, I wanted something more so desperately that I concocted a lie. Like a lie, because even then, God, who was it? I think it was Ben. I mean, once again, the whole thing's a giant metaphor, because even Ben at the beginning was like, hey, like in this, death sequence was kind of like, well, death dream world or whatever was basically like, oh, like, have you ever believed a lie so much that it became true? And it's like, right. And it was there from the very beginning. Like, he so desperately clung to this, believing like his brain shook it out and be like, no, I'm not, it has to be true. Like, this vision, it's like, yeah, this vision you concocted from a single image you saw from a calendar. So, but that's my thing. Did Asha see it? Like, and I guess next episode he probably have to ask Asha. It's like, you knew from the beginning New Eden wasn't, the moment I start spouting it, it was a lie, but well, she didn't find out until, like, afterwards, because she was already, like, knocked out on the train and everything by then. By the time he had, like, the vision of New Eden. Because he had that during his run-in with her, right? I'm already blanking a little bit. So, I mean, what makes matters worse, it's not only that you're dragging everyone you care about into this, it was a lie that you believed would benefit your daughter in the long run. Not just all of that. Once again, also playing into that vision that the people you care about, at least some of them, maybe all of them, who knows how it's all going to shake out. Some of the people you care about might die along the way because of your lie. But he even said, but it's also, you killed your brother because of it. Pike. You killed Pike to keep your secret, and now that secret might not have meant anything, I mean, truth be told is, it would have come to that sooner or later, because, once again, but that's the thing, too. I'd thrown that out there last episode, too. What if Pike never fully found out that the whole thing with New Eden was a lie? Then who knows how... He probably would have bought into what Andre was saying of, like, right, I want you to be the godfather of Liana. Like, if it was that stipulation of, like, yeah, but I know you're just offering this to me, not because it's real, that's how you really feel, you just want to shut me up because I know the truth. And so, like, right, like, Pike could have backed away from this fight, but he wanted it, but Andre could have, like, tempered this whole situation, because he had to sign off on going to the knives as well. They could have found another way, maybe, and so that guilt's going to eat him alive. And the fact is that he's confessing that to none other than Josie, I think, speaks volume. Which I think that in itself plays nicely into the whole Zara and Josie thing. Because obviously it's like the whole old Yvonne's way of handling things. It's like Zara never really liked the customs of the tale. But she acknowledges that Andre and Josie always made each other better. Which Josie was kind of like, no, but then like Zara's like, no, it's okay. Like, I'm glad that Andre has you, because she's like, I think me and Andre work better at co-parenting than as a couple. Like, I think there's just too much issue there. There's too much history there. But also, like, Josie will always be somewhere in his heart. Like, there's something there. So I guess that leaves the door open. And it's because even the fact that Zara was like, no, you should be here, like, with Andre, too. It's like, he would want you to be here, so. And obviously, Till is having a hard time of it because ultimately, and you never get to see her, like, she always tries to keep up a strong front, but, like, to see her break down like that, and, you know, even Audrey being like, yeah, he is, like, your best friend, which I thought was, like, I get gushy about friendship stuff. I'm like, oh, that's pretty dope. Because I don't think they'd ever say that, but it's like, yeah, like, after everything they've been through, you guys are besties, you know? And so for her, it's just a thing of, I can't help him. Again, just that desperation of like, I can't help someone I care about, someone that's important to me. I can't do anything for him. And I don't know if her encounter with Joseph Wilford last episode changed things in her, but for her to offer to help Andre, I think is so interesting, even though she was all about, like, no, we can claim the train, but Wilford's just kind of like, no. And she's like, wait, what? After everything I gave up, after everything I sacrificed, the fact is that when the time came, she was there to help Andre. She actually, like, she opened the pathway for him to come back. And I think, you know, and I don't know, maybe it's some long con, maybe it's some long game that she's playing. But for now, there's some part of my brain still, like, a little suspicious, but there's a good chunk of me that's like, I don't know, it seems sincere, but that could always be the double bluff, you know? Because it's just interesting that, like, after, like, one episode, because you were just all about that last episode, and that wasn't long ago, like, that was literally about 12 hours ago, because by the time they found Andre, like, he had been out like that for 12 hours, obviously because they didn't check on him until, like, overnight. So, yeah, it's only been 12 hours for you to have that much of a change of heart, considering all the chaos you sowed and was a part of in season 2. It makes me wonder. We'll ultimately have to wait and see on that front, but I just found that so fascinating. And then on the other side of things, we had Wilford doing some research of his own, and he ends up even bringing Alex in. And he had looked at the books of what Andre had said, so either, like, I don't know whether he saw through what Andre said and was like, oh, that's complete another BS, because I was wondering if he was looking into that, but in fact, he was looking into something else, because I guess he's correlating why Andre, like, the information Andre would have gotten to where they were. He's like, that didn't make any sense. So ultimately, he's looking through stuff, like, the entire time, he was like, right, I could never fully catch up with you guys, so what I did instead, though, is I try to cut you off, and he thought he found them in France, but then it's like, but Alex is like, we weren't anywhere near that. He's like, exactly my point. If it wasn't you, that had to be someone else. He's thinking it's Melanie, which I was like, oh, that's interesting. I was like, oh, Melanie might be alive, and the fact is he's happy about it, because it's like, he's had a change of heart when he was in his desperate, lowest moment, like, you know, when they were both in a bad place, who was there to be their guiding light? Melanie. So maybe because he thinks, like, right, if he can get Melanie back, maybe it'll shift and change things. I don't know. Like, maybe he's trying to alleviate some of his guilt, because a lot of stuff he did flash before his eyes when he was in his dream lights. That waking slumber, like, changed him. Like, you know, to some extent. Who knows whether he'll end up reverting back to it? But Melanie being alive, who knows? But I mean, this might all have set them on a course where running into Melanie, you know, someone had thrown out there. I don't know if someone was saying this, because I can't, like, someone had left something in the comment on the if you're curious, I won't mention what it is. Someone mentioned something that might pop up in the train. I don't know whether they said they heard it as like a rumor of something that might pop up this season, but they didn't believe it. I just don't want to talk about what it is specifically. But if you're curious, if you're like, something that might end up being a spoiler because it might end up being what this whole thing is, this whole Melanie thing, then you can go check it out. I think the comment's still there. It's on my Snowpiercer Season 3 trailer discussion video. So it's there if you want to know. If you're like, I don't want to take the chance that it might be right. That's why I don't want to say anything, because I don't want to spoil anything for anyone. Like, because some people like myself don't really read into stuff too much. So I try, like, because there might be information just generally out there about something that might be. So once again, the person was like, they heard a rumor. I don't think anything official was ever said. I think this is just what they heard. But I don't know if the thing that they heard is also tied to the graphic novels. Like, I've never read too much into them. I know obviously this pulls from them in some regards, but it's not like a one for one. So certain aspects of it have come up because of the graphic novel. Like there's at least one thing I know that's from the graphic novels that I was like, oh, it ended up being super true in this show. So I don't know if that has any correlation or whether that's kind of something they're doing specifically for the show. Once again, I'm talking in circles, but I'm curious, is this going to be a Melanie thing? And if it is potentially a Melanie thing, because that's been a big question, like, is she actually alive? Is she dead? Not knowing is kind of, once again, kind of the worst, and because you just, because you kind of want to give into hope, but you want to have hope, but at the same time, you also just kind of just want to go, but I don't want to get my hopes up type of thing too. So I'm curious to see if it is Melanie or if it's this other thing. Like, I do apologize talking in circles about it. Like I said, I just don't want to ruin it for anyone that's like, for it to be like a surprise for anyone if it ends up being that thing. At the end of the season, if we get there and it's not that other thing, then I'll talk about it then what the person suggested if you were curious. So that's, once again, very roundabout way of talking about all that, but still. I'm very, very interested to see where all this takes us next episode. If Andre is going to, change up the leadership, because he's going, right, if it was all a lie, like, I can't lead this train on a lie. So is he going to actually pass the torch to Ruth? Once again, it's going to make it, like, right. So maybe if he had, it's just going to bring into question everything he did last episode, why he fought. So is, what are you fighting for? Was it all worth it in the end? So a lot of those questions are going to continue rummaging through Andre's mind, I'm sure. So it's definitely going to be interesting to see where the next episode takes us with all of this. But really, that's all I'm going to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.